to start when I was about 12 years old, and I wanted a rifle, a little 22 rifle, and I guess I saw them in a Sears catalog. Anyway, Dad and Mom finally broke down and bought me a little rifle. And I started shooting anything that would move. And later on, I took to the woods with the rifle and began on the squirrels. And I had an old black dog, Caesar, and he was good at treeing a squirrel, but he could never catch one. Because when a squirrel starts to run, he runs for a tree, but he never goes up the tree from the direction he's running, because something would jump and pull him down. So he'll run around to the back side of the tree and go up. Well, old Caesar learned that. So when he got to the tree with the squirrel just ahead of him, he never stopped at the tree. He'd round to the back, and sometimes he'd pull the squirrel down. If he didn't, then I'd use the rifle. And we just about decimated the squirrels in the local timber. And I feel bad about it now. I didn't then, because I'd bring the squirrels home and dress them out, and that's what we had for supper. But I still enjoyed shooting, whether it was target practice or what. And I could knock a sparrow out of the top of a big, tall tree almost every time. Well, later on, the war started, and I was married at that time, still had the little 22 rifle. And finally, ended up in the Army. We were doing basic training down in Arkansas, Fort Robinson, Arkansas. And there was a kid there. I was probably 21 by that time. And this kid was from Kentucky. He was 18. But he wasn't a nice kid. He was kind of a bit of a bully and a loudmouth. Anyway, he thought he was from Kentucky, where all the sharpshooters came from. So it actually finally boiled down to kind of a contest between he and me. We were the two top in the company. So finally ended up, and I don't remember how they did the points, but let's just say I ended up with 230 points, and he ended up with about 228. I beat him out, and he didn't like that at all. Anyway, I got because I was in the infantry, got this little badge. Everybody in the infantry wore one of these. But you'll notice there's an oak cluster around that. And that means there were three grades of expert, sharpshooter, well, and the other grade you just didn't know how to qualify. But because of my ability, I finally won the oak leaves as an expert. If I'd have been in probably World War I might have qualified as a sniper. I wouldn't like that. I don't mind shooting at somebody who's trying to shoot at me, but to just take advantage of somebody who's not aware you're there and your sights are trained on him, I wouldn't want to do that. Anyway, ended up in Italy, in the infantry, in the 91st Division, and the war was beginning to wind down, but it was a long ways from over. And so I got a little ribbon here, which is the campaign ribbon for the European Theater of War. And you'll notice there's 2 stars on it, 2 little stars. Each star means that you took part in a major battle campaign. And a major battle campaign might last several months, but it usually occupied as a signal movement, either victory or defeat, but that kind of ended that battle in that sector. And so one of these is for the taking part of in the Apennine, northern Apennine Mountains, and that's where I first went as an infantryman. But right quick, they put me into a mortar squad. Do you know what a mortar is? A trench mortar?
Yeah.
It's a tube that shoots a shell up in the air and down.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're good, after a couple of trial shots, you can pretty well place where that shell is going to land. And I was there in that mortar squad for, well, from probably early February to the middle of March. Our squad was staying in a cave, and out in front of the cave was a little flat, almost like a little island, green grass. By that time, the grass was beginning to green up. So we're a nine-man squad. We was out there in the sunshine because the Germans were over on the other side of the mountain and they couldn't see us. But they had been there before they got pushed out, and they knew where the cave was. And one afternoon, we were lolling around in the sunshine, and we heard this whistle, and a shell landed just on the edge of this little green. Well, every man dived for the cave, and one guy tripped, and just at the mouth of the cave, nobody pulled him on it, and we just ran over and we could get to safety. One of the amusing things that happened, and there's plenty of them that happened that way. Anyway, one day we were called out to repair roads because trucks back and forth in the springtime rains, and it was mud, deep mud. But I had a headache. I was feeling pretty rotten. So finally I told the sergeant in charge, I said, you know, I'm not feeling good, I'm sick. He said, well, go lay down on that big old rock slab there and rest a while. So I did that until finally the squad went back to their barracks. And I went to the, a field hospital, I guess. That's what they called it. And I was there a couple of days. They gave me aspirin and stuff and said, oh, you're okay to go back to the front. So I went back. But then I got sicker. And the reason, what precipitated the whole thing was our squad was called out to go up to take over a machine gun outpost up on top of a mountain. And I was feeling bad again. This was about a week after that first bout with the fever. But you can't say, well, I don't want to go, or I'm afraid I'm feeling not very good. They'd say, yeah, you coward. Well, so I went. And we hiked up seemed like about 2 miles, almost all the way up, and took over this machine gun emplacement for the night while the local guys who manned the machine gun went on a night patrol. Okay, so along about 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting on the edge of the machine gun emplacement, all quiet, and suddenly a German machine pistol rattled off just below us. I could have thrown a stone in and hit somebody. But we didn't want to give away, and we knew they were searching for the machine gun. We didn't want to give that away. So we all just sat tight. And finally, I could hear German voices whispering to one another. They were that close. And finally they withdrew because they knew their position had been given away. Well, I was so sick in my stomach. I'm sure fear was part of it, but the part of it was a real illness. So we finally got down to our bivouac, probably along about 4 in the morning, and I was sick. And so we slept for a couple hours, and I went to the sergeant in charge of our squad, and I said, you know, I'm just not feeling good. I'm sick. And he looked at the white of my eyes, and he said, "Is your urine yellow?" And I said, "Yeah, it sure is." He said, "You got yellow jaundice." And so they sent me back to Battalion Aid Station. And I was there a couple of days, and then we got on, 2 or 3 or 4 of us, I don't remember how many, got on an airplane and flew clear back to Leghorn. And I was in a field hospital in Leghorn, Italy, for 5 weeks. And during that time, I think there was 21 of us guys in that ward. And at the end of our stay, when we were up on our feet and moving around by that time, and the push for the Po Valley started. And trucks came in carrying ambulances, carrying wounded and dead corpses. So it was a nasty, nasty thing going through the minefields before you got to the Po River. And so they loaded us up in the trucks. Then they just unloaded the corpses. And 24 hours later, we were back at the front. And this time, the mortar squad had been, I don't know, I never saw any more of it, my old friends. But they put us in an infantry platoon, and we were ready to cross the Po. But the bridges were out, and the Po was in flood at that time. So how are we going to get across? Well, they found some old Italian who owned a boat, and so about 5 men at a time, or 6, would load in that boat, and he'd row us across, land us, row us back, and of course, immediately we were in enemy territory. And as soon as we had enough men, we started off, I think we're Highway 99, trying to make contact with the retreating Germans. They had been retreating across the Po Valley for, I suppose, 3 or 4 days, but they had sown the whole valley with land mines. So, with tripwire, so if you stepped on a tripwire, the mine exploded, blew off a leg or whatever. And the guy who was my best friend, Harry Yuska, was carried off the field, blind from a mine, and they thought he was dead, but later on he joined the outfit again. What happened, the guy in front of him had stepped on a mine, and the mine blew sand in Harry's eyes and blinded him. He thought he'd be blind the rest of his life, but a few days later they just cleared up. So we got across and started out. This may sound like bragging, but I wasn't bragging. I'm not bragging. Because we reformed the 1st platoon, which was wiped out in the minefields. We were all new. And they needed somebody to head up the different squads and the platoon. So the sergeants and the 1st lieutenant was trying to find guys to fill in, and they came down to me, would I be 1st scout? Well, the 1st scout, in a line of march, he's out there in the very front. And I didn't want that, because the orders were go until you meet resistance. But had to go. So finally I said, well, okay, I'd be 1st scout if another guy who I had quite a lot of confidence in, and he was from Kentucky, an older man who had been wounded in the ankle by a machine gun several months earlier, but he'd come back. And I said, well, okay, if Pop Riley will be 2nd scout, I'll be 1st scout. So there we are, starting down the highway and I wrote about that in one of the poems that you probably read the story or read the poem. So there we went. And of course we made contact. And except for God's intervention, I wouldn't be here today. You wouldn't be here today. for sure.